Welcome to Forged by Failure. Today I'm working through a battle plan and mission and deployment thought process and analysis in preparation for an upcoming RTT. So what I've done is I filmed myself going through my preparations on TTS to go through one of the battle plans with the list I'm bringing to the RTT, but I take that information and I condense it into about a 5 to 10 minute discussion with a couple of maps at the start of the video. So if you want that quick and dirty information on what my thought processes are, quick tips, go through the first part of the video, take a look at it, engage with me in the comments, see if you liked it, you didn't like it, or if you think I'm completely off my rocker. And then if you want to hear a bit more in-depth discussion about Helsmith deployment process, stick around for the back half of the video. Thank you for watching. Okay, so first I'm going to summarize what I speak about in the video. So after I go through the summary of the mission deployment analysis as well as unit deployment, there'll be a longer portion of this video where I work through the problem on TTS. So what you're seeing here is just a summary of essentially a half hour or 20 minutes of work on TTS. So you can just take the 5 to 10 minutes of goodness you want out of this presentation. And if you want, please stay later and watch my thought process on TTS and see if anything is useful for you there. That being said, here's a summary of my analysis of the mission and the deployment. So we're starting with Battle Plan 3, which is Roiling Roots. And what I do when I look at battle plans now is I start to figure out what are the conditions. The first question I ask is, what are the conditions to gain primary points and how can I deny my opponent? So in this presentation here, in this battle plan, we can see it's 5 points for controlling one objective, 3 points for controlling any pairs, so the red or the green there on the screen, and 2 points if you control more objectives than your opponent. So for this mission, I look at it and say, well, I'm definitely going to score a minimum of 5 points a turn for primary. If not, something terribly wrong has gone on. And I can't guarantee that I'm going to control pairs, especially the red pair is difficult for me to get to. And controlling more is a maybe on some turns, but I can definitely look at denying my opponent the pairs. We have a green and a red close to our deployment zone, so we can look for denying our opponent the pairs, keeping that primary score close, and having the opponent come towards us and using the Helsmiths to shoot shooting and charging from bull centaurs to do damage. So that being said, the second question I ask myself is, how does the terrain in this battle plan interact with the battle tactics? So we look at the terrain and we look at the battle plan layout and we see in the middle here we have a neutral territory. So if my opponent's bringing scouting, scouting 1 is easily achievable for them. And vice versa for me, I'm bringing Master of the Paths as one of my battle tactics. So therefore, when I get into step 2, which is have more units in neutral territory, that's also achievable for me. So I can start to plan out that, hey, I should look to get at least 10 points out of Master of the Paths as well. And you can note this down as you go through. And then comes kind of the key deductions here. And that has to do with obscuring. Because for me, a Helsmith player, a lot of my damage is based on shooting. There is some charging from the bulls, but the shooting damage is what I need to either deliver or to mitigate onto my troops. So I look at what terrain has obscuring. So naturally, we look at this map here, and everything in red on the screen there has obscuring, both the places of power and the forest features as per the terrain rules. So I see red starts obscuring. I think, okay, we've got 2 portions. There's a small place of power, and a larger spot that's great for staging in both of our deployment zones because it's equal deployment. And I think, what else can be turned obscuring? So with the current GHB, a hero within 3 of the place of power on a dice roll 3 up, you can change an objective or a terrain feature that's non-faction terrain into obscuring within 12 of the hero. So I go through and I label all the possibilities I think that both the opponent and I could change into obscuring. So you see there in yellow, those are either the objectives of terrain I think that's reasonable to turn into obscuring. And so then I think to myself, so what? So the so what of this is that it's defining avenues of approach for enemy infantry and cavalry. So we know that the enemy can possibly stage and move up and deny my shooting before getting into my area, as well as defining possible avenues of fire for our shooting, right? So we see that the green objectives, yes, you can stage to get on them, but once you get to the green objectives, you're probably not going to have turned them obscuring, and those objectives will be good to be covered by fire. The red objectives, however, I might not be able to shoot my opponent off of, and vice versa, they might not have to be able to shoot myself off of if I put infantry or cavalry on them. So then I start to make my plan for the deployment of my forces. So I take a look at my terrain analysis, my battle plan analysis for both primary and what can be obscuring, and I think about my unit deployment. So this, as I mentioned here on the side, I mentioned at the start, it is opponent dependent. You can make a good deployment plan, but if your opponent has a series of abilities that could either get into an alpha strike, teleport, etc., that could mess you up if you misdeploy. So I find that practicing placement, it builds good muscle memory. However, you need to be flexible and adaptable and understand what the capabilities of your opponent are. So I kind of have a list of questions in my mind that I ask as a Helsmiths player of my opponent. The first one is, do you have an alpha strike capabilities? Do you have a move in the movement phase, a run and charge, something that can long bomb into my gun line and tie it up for a turn and essentially prevent damage to allow the enemy forces to stage onto objectives for a turn without me being in a position to regain the tempo? Do you have a teleport ability? So if I leave the backfield, can you come and take objectives? Can you come and stage and get near my gun line? And then I kind of try and think and reason through, if I know the army, the opposing army well enough, what does a double turn look like for damage, both for myself but also for the opponent? So once I kind of work through those questions in my mind, then I get to looking at deployment. So this next deployment here is just a generic deployment where I kind of try and couch for the opponent having an alpha strike capability, and I kind of think about having, if they do have a teleport capacity as well. So first of all, I look at my heroes and I think, where am I going to put my heroes? The first thing being, I want a hero near that place of power to turn the objectives or terrain to obscuring, so I can allow myself to either stage the bull centaurs or a brick of infantry as they move up. So the infernal cohorts, vice the infernal razors. So let's take a look at where I put my heroes. This is just a rough estimate. You'll see it in TTS if you stick along for the rest of the video. We're going to put one near the place of power to be able to start working on obscuring the things around it. We're going to put one near the back objective, and then we're going to put one near the forest. And depending on the synergies and what I put in the forest, to either help out what's going in the forest or to come in to help with a counter charge in that area. So with the hero rough place in my head, I think, where am I going to put infantry? Where am I going to hold points? Where am I going to threaten things? Because in my list, I do have 2 blocks of shooting infantry. So I definitely look at it and I'm like, okay, I want an infantry block on the left-hand side to be able to take that objective and to deny my opponent the red pairs right away. And then I want a couple infantry blocks into the forest, one to go up on that green objective and deny my opponent, and then a couple to start causing damage if the opponent comes near the forest. And a fun trick with this is if you are obscuring and you step one model out, then your unit's no longer obscuring and you can unlock either the full 12 or 18-inch range with your infernal razors with flamers or blunderbusses. So I have a kind of rough concept of where I'm going to put the infantry. I think, where do I want my artillery? So I put the artillery in this position here because I want it centralized to be protected by an infantry block, 2 heroes, and one of those heroes is definitely going to be a caster in my list because I'm running Forbidden Power, so I can use the bridge to pull a gun out if things get into trouble. And I don't want the artillery too near to the other infantry blocks and near the objectives. So if a enemy unit makes a charge under the green objective, manages to bring in one of those infantry blocks into combat, we don't want to give that pile in swing down towards tagging one of our artillery pieces. So for here, I'm putting them more towards the home objective side, and then depending on ranges and what the opponent puts down, I'll look to place them out there. But that's just kind of a rough idea for the artillery placement. And lastly, I look at my bold centaurs, where am I going to put them. Since I've already committed to the left-hand side with some infantry, I think I'm going to reinforce the bull centaurs into our avenue of main effort, which is the green, and then potentially late turn push, either 2 or 3, up onto the enemy red objective with the bull centaurs. So I'm going to start them obscuring in that forest, kind of push the infantry out as a screen for the bull centaurs, and then allow the bull centaurs to do their work as the game progresses. So this is just a rough generic shakedown of what I worked through in TTS. And with that being said, now the video is going to transition to me working through TTS, me working through the things I already described. So I'm going to go through the terrain analysis, I'm going to go through the unit analysis, and I'm going to go through how I think it interacts with the battle plan. So if you're interested, I would highly recommend that you stick around, engage, with the video. Take a look at what you thought. If you have any better tricks or tricks, having trouble talking there, on deployment, how you assess battle plans, put it in the comments below. Let's have a great discussion about it, and I'll hope to see you at the end of the video.
Hello, welcome back to Forged by Failure. Today, I figured I'd record kind of my thought process as I go through some preparations for a local RTT this weekend. I find with Helsmiths, you really got to think through what you're going to do because it's not a resilient army, and it's an army that lives and dies off the ability to be visible and not visible, and to scrape enough points to keep the game close to the end, around 4 or 5. So it's my findings with the army so far. So today I've got my army loaded into TTS. I've got my battle tactics, massive pass, intercept, and recover. And I'm going to take you through my thought process and how I look at the battle plan, the first battle plan I'm going to play for the RTT. So in the player pack, it's Boiling Roots, and how I'm going to kind of prep turn one and what I think is good and what's bad for me. So that being said, let's take a look at the battle plan first. So Boiling Roots, you can see here, I've laid it out on the table. You've got neutral territory. So what of that is any opponent with scouting can easily get scouting turn one. So you're going to have probably 5 points against you turn one from an opponent. Easy to get them started on scouting. However, it's harder to get scouting two because you have a very small deployment zone back. As well as for myself, I'm taking Master of the Pass, so I can push into the middle. So I can get Master of the Pass to have more things in neutral territory, fairly easy compared to other maps. So right away, we take a look at the map and we kind of think, all right, this kind of suits my battle tactic. I could easily aim to get Master of the Pass 2. So we're looking at 10 points off Master of the Pass. Let's just throw that up there in our old tracker to see what it looks like. So I'm thinking, get Master of the Pass by hopefully turn 2, just to plan for it. And then maybe by 3 or 4. Let's just throw in the 4 for now. Why not? So 10 points. We aim to have 10 points. This is just an estimate. Now I'm going through and I'm estimating what I think I can get on this map with the current army I've got. All right, let's take a look at the rules. So, Whirling Roots. As you can see, 6 objectives, 2 pairs, pair green, pair red. You control 5 victory points for 1, 3 victory points for a pair, and 2 victory points for more than your opponent. And then the underdog twist is that the underdog can pick a pair of objectives and make it strike last when you're contesting the objective. So you turn the greens to strike last or the red to strike last. So what does this mean to us as Helsmiths? Well, for my army, the way I've built it, it's not very mobile. It has a brick of bull centaurs. It has a demon smith on Taurus, so it has some mobility. But there's no way that I can force protect deep into my opponent's territory. So we're definitely going to be holding one. We better be holding one objective, or else the game's pretty much over for ourselves. So we're going to be scoring a minimum of 5, but we want to look at pairs. So when we go and do a map analysis here, we want to look at what pair is easiest for us to hold. Not only for us to hold the pair, so get control onto both objectives and hold it, but to prevent your opponent from holding a pair. So if you look at the map, and like I talked about, it's hard for us to force project across the map. So immediately the thoughts are, okay, this red pair is very hard for us to do, especially with Iron Man moves 4 inches. And we want to go for concentrating around this triangle of the 2 greens and a blue to maximize our primary. However, depending on the opponent we're playing, if they're very mobile, they have recursion, they have teleporting, they can easily just deny us one of these green and pop out onto these 2 reds and start scoring more and a pair. So ideally we score a pair, so 8 points per turn, but let's aim for at least controlling more than your opponent, so knocking our opponent off objectives and trying to get that pair. So that being said, we're going to go through, we're going to put 5 points in for holding an objective because we're going to try and hold blue throughout. 1 objective, or if we've been kicked off blue and some disaster and we've moved out the board, really focusing greens, we're holding 1. So let's go and put 5 points in the scorecard for each of the primaries. Okay, so currently sitting at 35 points minimum. So what we aim to have minimum here. Intercept and recover, in terms of kind of estimating that out, that's hard. Hard to estimate. It depends on the opponent, depends on how good they are at placing treasures and how active they need to be with their treasures. I'll put it as a 0 for now, and then we'll see what the score, kind of estimated score is at the end, and then we'll toss some stuff in there. And again, this is just a general estimate. I don't bank on this. I don't think this is destined to happen. I kind of like to have the idea of where should I be as the game progresses, to give me an idea of what I need to do for tempo, or if I need to take a double, or if I need to start looking at denying my opponent. All right, that being said, let's take a look at deployment and how we kind of want to focus the game plan. So the first thing I'm going to do as a Helsmith player is I'm going to take a look at the board and say, what is the problem for me? Now, Helsmiths, the way I build it, love the shooting. I lean into what the army does. It shoots. So the problem, what counter shooting in the current GHB? Well, first of all, obscuring terrain that gives cover, so minus 1 to hit. So you see on this mod here, Mitch's maps, I put the 1 inch off this place of power. Now, depending on the terrain of the event, it's obviously not going to be a perfect circle, but it's good enough to give us an estimate. And we'll put a 1 inch off our 2 obscuring terrains right now. Okay, so now we look and we can see that an enemy can sit here in obscuring, being not visible to us, and then punch out on this objective. Likewise, we can sit in here and punch out onto this objective and project force here. So that tells me it'll be hard to gain these 2 pairs because the enemy has a great staging area, and so do we. So this middle avenue here will be fought over, most likely, but I don't think it'll be decisive. So at the end of the day, it's probably going to be decisive on how well we can deny the enemy from getting this point here. And we do have some obscuring options here off the place of power. And as well, let's take a look at what the place of power would look like if we put hero there, just within 3 of it. So let's pump that out to 3. And remember, activate place of power, right? So if we can activate place of power at the start of the turn, we can turn something into obscuring, whether it be an objective or another terrain. I'll read it out for you here in a second because I need a refresher. Everyone needs a refresher sometimes when they're going through doing their homework, planning this stuff. Okay. Do activate place of power. We'll just pull it up here. And yeah, place of power. If you're not familiar with this rule, like I still need a refresher on it. But I highly recommend getting into it. I kind of sloughed it off at the start of the GHB and then ran into several opponents who are very good at using this ability. So activate place of power. Once per turn, start army, start of any turn. Pick a hero. So we'll just use War Despot here. A smaller base. Some opponents will have a bigger base to do this. So like for us too, we can do it like this. Bigger base gives you better ability to do this. Pick a hero within 3. Pick the effects. We're going for the obscuring effect here. Pick a Gyronite objective, so any of these objectives, or visible non-faction terrain feature within 12 of the hero, roll a dice. So you can see here, this guy can pick that one, he can pick that one, he can pick that one, and he can make them obscuring. So it goes off on a 3+. So, it's not a guarantee. I've had a few opponents roll poorly and not get it off, but you can plan within 2 turns to 3 turns. So you try it on your turn, try it on the start of the opponent's turn, keep trying. You're going to get it eventually if you keep going for it. So if we take a look at our Demon Smith, though, Demon Smith on Taurus here, let's say we're into the second turn 1, say he's up here. It can force project out. He can even, not quite there, can get all the way up. So say he's contesting this, he's touching that place of power. Nope, not quite. Not quite. But you get here, here, and then down there. So reliably, we can see here that within a couple turns, we can either turn this obscuring, or we can turn this into obscuring. And potentially the tree up there. Now, what does this do for us? Two things. It's kind of that double-edged sword. Like we talked about earlier, it works for the opponent to stage and hide from you, but it also works for you to stage your units and step out. So that being said, I look at this, I think, okay, this is a great staging area here. This, I need to have a hero in deployment near this place of power because I want to build up a couple options to obscure my troops as they either contest this objective or down here. Now, do I want to obscure this right away? Probably not. And do I want to obscure this? Probably not. Not right away, because we want to leave our avenues of fire open easily enough. Because this right here, if I obscure that, it will essentially allow a candy opponent to go like this. Stage up here, charge into our area here, so he can stage up one turn. If he doesn't get shot off, say something durable like trolls, you know, they move their into here and they're into our castle area here. So I don't want to obscure this right away. So my first thought is a hero is going to go on this side, and that hero is going to obscure this objective here, make this obscure. Because we want to punch out to this objective, put something on it, and we also want to deny our opponent off it. So I think part of my game plan here, and I can make little notes. I take a sheet of paper off the side, is 1, hero on the place of power on the left-hand side. 2, try and obscure, matchup dependent, but most likely try and obscure the objective right in front of us. Create that obscuring and give yourself a base to get onto it. Now, again, obscuring can work both ways for Helsmiths, because the obscuring passive ability is, well, every model in a non-monster, non-war machine. So 1, our Tormentor Bombards, our Demon Smiths, he flies anyways. But these right here, because of that change with the latest update, these can't be obscured. So you can set them right there. They're not obscured. They can shoot out, and vice versa, they can be shot. That does not have the fly keyword is within 1 inch of this terrain feature. The following will apply. That unit is only, so the key part there is while every model. So for example, we have our flame hurlers here, right? And we want to keep them nice and safe in the woods, you know, make it -1 if they're charged against. So we put them in the woods here. So they're totally obscured right now. They can't be seen, and their range is cut in half. So it's only visible to enemy units that are within its combat range, and the range is cut down to half. So for the flame hurlers, that brings their range down to 6. Not super far, but enough to cover on this objective. But the thing is, once we stage here, we do our 4-inch move. Let's say 4 inches is up to there. Now, even though we have a couple models, 5 of it, half the squad, and a 6, that are still within an inch of the obscuring terrain, we don't meet the condition for obscuring because every model in the unit is not within an inch of the terrain feature. We don't meet it, we don't meet the possibility, so we are visible. However, that brings us to 12-inch shooting. So it brings our shooting way about here, and if we were a blunderbuss, that brings it up to 18. So just be aware that you can pull tricks like that when you do your deployment planning. Is you can start off, put your unit in the woods, or put it around something that has the obscuring place of power, and then tiptoe out, even if you get one thing out like that. Now the unit's not obscured, now it has full access. So think about that to keep your Helsmith units safe that are shooting, that are either your razors or your blunderbusses. It's a key thing that we need to make use of. So we already got 2 things going on here. 1, we know we need to contest this objective on the left. 2, we know that we need to have a hero near this objective. Now, if we look at our list, because we're going to try and do the hero to activate it. Taking a look at our list here, we've got the Demon Smith on Taurus is there to help out the Bull Centaurs, as well as key in my list is he casts the Forbidden, so the bridge. So the bridge is one of our avenues to pull stuff out of combat. Or we have the War Despot, or we have the Ashen Elder. Now the War Despot is the one that can pick something within 12 movement phase, in friendly movement phase, roll a bat D3, 2 up. You can do mortal wounds, and if one of your infantry units is in combat, that infantry unit can retreat and charge or retreat and shoot. So right now we take a look at what we got here. Since I don't have any Hobgrots, it's kind of tough to just put a Hobgrot. Ideally, if we had any Hobgrots, we'd just Hobgrot tiptoe onto that. But I do kind of like it because it does force a commitment for us. Now, we talked about earlier that this is a great staging area, and this is where I'm going to put key pieces. Now, key damage dealing pieces, what I mean. We'll put the bulls in here probably, we'll put some of our shooters, and then we'll put a back line of guns back here. Now, what do I care about to go with the bulls and the shooters? I do care about the War Despot, trying to give that 12-inch 12-inch view of trying to get things out. So let's take a look at, if he was here, where's 12 inches? So right now we know we want to contest this. We want to have heroes. So let's determine which hero we want to put there. 12 inches. And right about to there. So it's not spectacular, not great. You know, it covers back here. So maybe if there's an infantry back here, it's engaged. So War Despot might not be our best choice. Ashen Elder. What is the Ashen Elder doing? Well, it's giving that ignore point of damage, or it's helping boost up with prayers some Rens or some crit mortals. The Ren in the Bull Centaurs is okay. You know, +1 Ren in the Bull Centaurs is great. However, they already have crit mortals. So even if you get the super prayer on that, it doesn't do anything great. So I think what we're going to do here is we kind of got this. We've got our Infernal Cohort, Scourge guy ran. Do I want the Infernal Cohort near where the shooter is going to be to like regen them? Yeah, most definitely. But I think on this map, we can't put them there. So the way we're going to look at this deployment is having that Infernal Cohort right up there, stagger them in there. This is just a rough deployment. And then leaving space for the Ashen Elder to be guarded hero off them, as well as being able to get 12 to there, 12 to there. And so now what we have is we have potentially an objective that is obscured, an Ashen Elder that's set up to support them by giving them crit mortals, or a +1 to Ren rather, and then hopefully crit mortals. And then a unit that, let's see, turn 1, if I auto run them, every single one of them can get into the zone of control. And that's what you need to be on here. So this is step 1. We've determined it's Ashen Elder and Infernal Blade cohorts over here. All right. That being said, we know that's going to hold out for some time. I mean, the enemy is going to have to make a big commitment to come down there and take that objective off us. So unless they commit onto the flanks and come down there, we're going to deny that pair for as long as possible. So now we got to think, where are we going to put the combat power to back up denying this pair? Well, first part of that, pretty easy, is we're going to, so what we're going to do with that is we know we need to back something up to here. So we know that if someone makes a push or puts a unit on there, it needs to get shot off, and something needs to go back and take it. Well, step 1, if it's infantry, nothing in these guns is going to be useful, so it's going to have to be either the Demon Smith on Taurus or something that can charge into there. So that being said, there's a couple options here. We can look next at what we're going to put into this bush and what we're going to put to back up this objective. So step 1, let's take a look, because these 2 shooting units are pretty key to living. Let's take a look at how we fit them in here. So Flame Hurler is obviously up front. Everyone wholly within. This is going to be rough. Roughly here. And then we put, let's say, our blunderbusses back there. And then additionally, let's take a look at Bull Centaurs. We could put the Bull Centaurs here. However, unless we turn this to obscuring on our second attempt at obscuring, they are positioned to counterattack each way. However, any long distance shooting, so let's see here, let's see if there's like us, 5, 20. So they're probably safe for a turn, and then you can move up here. So this is an option. Not the greatest option in my opinion, because you could also put them around the forest here to obscure them. But then you're committing onto these flanks here. And I think we need to, in this matchup, just continuously be able to deny this point, and then go out and fight over the middle. And then this gives you options to go into either. Now our guns, I always look at where I'm going to put the Tormentor Bombard first, because that turns off commands, which is far more valuable to splash mortals than pure damage. So Tormentor Bombard, great in TTS because you can kind of plan it. You don't need to be aggressive with it because that's covering into the back. But remember, they move 4. So if you put it here, take a look, and they're like, okay, turn 1, whatever, it moves up. It needs to. It's got a pretty good range. You can cover this objective, this, that here, there. So we know the Tormentor Bombard is going to be centralized. And then depending on, if the enemy has teleport, what the enemy has, we can start to look at our Deathstreaker rocket batteries as kind of screens for any teleporting, but also covering these objectives here. Now, I would keep your gun line centralized here, especially if you're playing as someone that has intercept and recover. I like to put all 3 on the gun line, keep it back. But if you have the opportunity, you can also consider putting 1 on the flank. So we can put stuff up there. And then you start to think about, where can I put the Demon Smith on Taurus? Now, the Demon Smith on Taurus, for me, he has to go near the bulls to help the bulls out, but he also has a key, because he's my only caster. We have to look at, where can he cast bridge? Where can he pull stuff out of combat, and what can go up there and touch that objective? Now, we only have 1 thing left to deploy here. That's a War Despot. War Despot is best suited, I find, on this map. We want to find a place where he can be obscured. If he's not touching a place of power, he needs to be somewhere where he can be obscured, because that doesn't affect his 12-inch ability to pull stuff out of combat and do mortals. In my list, he's running the Gauntlets of Punishment. So we probably want to go up here, and then he could help these guys out here. Because this deployment, while not completely optimal, for me, I think it does set you up for a couple of things. One, you're going to contest this objective, so like we did when we did the analysis of the map. I want to deny that pair. So I'm going to put a lot of control up there and try and obscure it. 2, I need to back up that objective in case the enemy commits to it. So I have Bull Centaurs here. I have a couple of bits shooting that can range it. And then worst case Ontario, we send the Demon Smith on Taurus. Additionally, I have shooting here to remove any push down the middle and to protect our flank. And then things that can push onto this objective if the enemy takes it, Bull Centaurs, Demon Smith on Taurus. Now, Demon Smith on Taurus is probably going to go back here for now because he can fly over stuff. But that's kind of a rough look at deployment. So a bit over all over the place there, but the key things that I think that come from looking at a map and looking at your army. So first overall, you got to win the game by scoring points. So you take a look at the points and you say, okay, what's the minimum I can get for holding 1? So you put your 5 in. What do you look at your battle tactics? What can I do? Well, I have an easy way to put Master of the Path, so I can try and get a hero early and then get stuff into the middle, and then intercept and recover. Well, that depends on the opponent. So we put in our stuff here. Then we go look, and I said, remember the second part that I do is I look for obscuring. What is the woods? I can hide my stuff in completely. And where are the places of power to turn things into obscuring that I can start to stage off of and then protect these points. And then this map here, turning this obscuring and then putting the entire unit onto that objective works out well for us. And then you kind of build your game plan off that based on the army and having redundancy. To me, I want to have redundancy. I want to be able to, for me, I would like to at least keep my opponent off pairs and keep my opponent off more. So that means probably being able to control the 2 in front of me, and then keeping my opponent off their battle tactics as much as possible. And then it gives you the option that when you get into the flow and the tempo of the game, you can have a turn where either you get the double and you push up and just cripple the opponent's army, or if you get doubled, you can come back knock out a lot of the points here, score, get your 10, be set up for a 10. So a 10 on this map would be holding points here. So definitely not these two, so you don't have stuff here. But a 10 on this map would be being able to stage for me to take the green objectives and then holding more, so being able to touch on back onto that. So that's my thought process. And then after I kind of mess around with it on TTS, put it together, what I'll do is I'll write it down. So after this, I'll kind of snip out the picture, and then I'll just make a little PowerPoint of it. And then I've kind of got an idea in my head. Now, will I just auto-deploy like this when I go to the table? No. But it gives me an idea of the important things I need to do for the map. So like putting Ash and Elder and these guys here, I think that's just not going to change. Even if there's like a run and charge unit to come in here and touch them turn 1, that's fine. I'll put them back here. I'll put the Ash and Elder behind them for the ignore, and then I'll put some sort of backup to make that trade less desirable for the opponent. And as long as your main damage dealing pieces in Helsmiths don't get touched immediately, or you have backup plans to pull them out, like either the bridge or the war despots from Scourge of Iran, I think you can survive a lot of doubles if you have that capacity to covering fire. And that's where I like the Flame Brothers too. To be able to covering fire someone on the way in, and then even if they get tagged, there's a couple left. The Scourge of Iran them back from the cohort on this map because they're on the other side, and then you just shoot them in combat the next turn. So, bit of a longer video, but it's just kind of my rambling thoughts on how to look at a map, position your units, place them out on the table, and get an idea of what it looks like. I'm going to throw a kind of a PowerPoint look at this map at the end here, and probably toss it in the front, and we'll see what we get out with the lessons. So if you're watching this, thanks for watching, and I hope your games and your dice are having a good time, and bye-bye.